Chapter 181, Blood Can Heal? Fujin, Miko, and Masaru were keeping the Jashinists busy. After his big jutsu, Zankoku didn't attack much. His priests and devotees were the ones who were counter-attacking. Fujin kept flickering around the place. Seeing an opportunity, he flickered right behind the enemy lines and fired another round of air bullets. However, one of the priests turned around and countered with water bullets without using any hand signs. Each of his water bullets hit Fujin's air bullets and neutralized them. In addition, another 4 water bullets were headed at Fujin. Fujin fired a vacuum bullet at the priest and flickered away. The priest smirked and fired a water bullet to intercept the vacuum bullet. Both attacks clashed. The priest's smirk died when he saw Fujin's attack piercing through his as if it was just air. He immediately moved to his side. The vacuum bullet missed him by just a few inches. The priest could feel the suction force of the vacuum bullet as it passed him. A servant was behind him in line. The vacuum bullet pierced through his chest and left a hole in his right lung. The priest shouted, "Be careful of that boy's air bullets. They have a very high penetrative power." Fujin wasn't out of harm's way either. As soon as he flickered, his new position was pelted with shurikens and kunaus by the devotees. He had to flicker a few more times. On the other side, Masaru and Miko were fighting with the other priest and his devotees. Both spammed the Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu but were stopped by earth walls raised by the devotees. The priest stayed behind his devotees while making hand signs. Lightning Release, Lightning Fingers Jutsu. He pointed his fingers at Miko and Masaru. Lightning bolts were fired at high speeds at them. Both dodged in a hurry. Some sparks hit Miko, causing the hair on her body to stand up. However, no harm was done. At that moment, a few blood drops gathered at the tip of Zankoku's fingers. He waved his hands as if to throw the blood. Those blood drops moved at a very high speed at Fujin and the other two. Fujin noticed it immediately. He immediately flickered and got out of the way. He formed 2 vacuum bullets in his mouth and fired them at Zankoku. Miko and Masaru dodged as well. But their positions were attacked further by the other priest. They had to keep dodging. Zankoku dodged Fujin's vacuum bullets with ease. Fujin frowned, "These guys are good. I guess these 2 are his strongest priests. Winning against them won't be easy. Not to mention that this grand priest is definitely at least at elite Jounin level. What is Akihiko doing?" Akihiko, who was observing the situation, made the confrontation hand seal right when Zankoku dodged Fujin's attack. When he moved, he had come closer to 3 devotees. All of a sudden, 2 devotees attacked the priest who was keeping Fujin at bay. They grabbed their kunaus and attacked the priest's back. At the same time, the 2 devotees with the earth element attacked the priest who specialized in lightning release. The devotees slammed their hands on the ground and the priest was attacked by multiple stone spears. As for Zankoku, the 3 devotees around him immediately rushed towards him. Fujin noticed the situation and was surprised. He thought, what the heck did these Uchiha Jounins do exactly? How can they control so many Chunin level ninjas so perfectly? First 3 in the cave, and now these 7 despite it being more than just a few minutes since they cast the genjutsu. I don't recall any ninja being controlled in this way in the original series. Except maybe the 4th Mizukage. Still, Obito had the main Jakkyuha. Fujin's thoughts were cut short as he was surprised by what he was witnessing. A water wall appeared behind the priest that he had engaged earlier. The kunaus of his devotees were blocked. He made a hand sign and water spears appeared from the wall and impaled his devotees. The priest with the lightning element jumped out of the way. He fired 2 lightning beams that pierced through the heads of the devotees that attacked him. Blood appeared on the fingerprints of Zankoku. He smiled as he launched them at the 3 devotees surrounding him. 3 drops pierced through each of their chests. They coughed some blood. Unlike Fujin and Miko's surprise, Akihiko and Masaru weren't surprised at all. Akihiko analyzed, "We already got 1 jounin by this tactic. The others will keep their guard up. Anyways, their lower level fighting force is pretty much wiped out. It's still our advantage. Besides, the 4 devotees who attacked the priests died. However, the 3 devotees who attacked Zankoku were still alive. They all made a hand sign. A dozen explosion tags appeared on their bodies. Their eyes went red as they made them explode at the same instance. Zankoku, who was grinning at how easily he thwarted the Uchiha's tactic, was surprised. He yelled, "Fuck." A thin layer of blood began forming on his body. The explosions went off. The bodies of the devotees were decimated. The explosion ripped through the thin blood layer and hit Zankoku's body with full force. The 2 priests, the remaining servants and the lone devotee were shocked. They yelled, "Zankoku-sama." Akihiko and Masaru smirked as they thought, "It's over." With the leader dealt with, they only had to deal with the 2 priests. Defeating them wouldn't be much of a challenge. Fujin was surprised. He thought, the Sharingan definitely has a lot more depth to it. I didn't think I'd reach such a conclusion despite knowing about Izanagi, Izanami, and the crazy things Mangekyo can do. Fujin looked at the 2 priests and wondered if he could sneak attack them. He sighed, unfortunately, despite the shock, they are still at full alert. I guess catching a jounin off guard in battle won't be possible. The smoke of the explosion finally cleared away. Zankoku was still standing on his 2 feet. However, all his clothes were destroyed. His flesh had burn marks all over his body. His right eye had been destroyed by the blast. A lot of his blood had spilled on the ground around him. Fujin shot a vacuum bullet at him as he thought, he is still standing. Have to ensure that he is dead. After all, who knows what crazy abilities these Jashinists have. Surprisingly, Zankoku saw his attack and moved out of the way. Soon, the blood on the ground rose and covered him, forming a cocoon-like structure around him. The Konoha ninjas were shocked. Not wanting to see anything crazy, Fujin shot multiple air bullets at him. However, his attack was intercepted by water bullets once again. Miko and Masaru too tried attacking, but they were intercepted as well. Akihiko decided to not attack impulsively and kept his eye on Zankoku. In a few seconds, Zankoku stepped out from the blood cocoon. However, when he did, all the Konoha ninjas were shocked. Akihiko muttered, "How? Even the best medical ninja doesn't have this efficiency." Zankoku's wounds were all healed. Only horrible scars were remaining on his body. The only wound that still could be seen was his eye. It wasn't healed. Fujin wondered, was he healed by Jashin's blessings? Or is it due to his blood jutsus? After all, he hasn't completed the ritual to gain Jashin's blessings, right? If this healing is only due to blood jutsus and not due to Jashin, then it would be a very important jutsu to learn. Though it leaves scars on the body, I don't mind them. After all, what use is looking good if I am not even alive? Zankoku looked viciously at the Konoha ninjas. He said, "Kill everybody." The Jashinists were excited at his order. However, suddenly, the priests and Zankoku attacked the remaining devotee and servants. All were killed off. The Konoha ninjas were caught off guard by this development. Akihiko thought, oh well, saves us the effort. Now we have the numerical advantage. Zankoku said, now no one will backstab us. You two, don't look into those red eyes. Else I will have to kill you too. The priests nodded and said, don't worry. We know how to deal with the Uchihas. Akihiko flickered behind Fujin and said, you and Miko take care of the lightning user. Your wind manipulation should have an advantage. Fujin nodded. Both he and Akihiko flickered next to Miko and Masaru. Akihiko said, Masaru, you take care of the water specialist. Miko, aid Fujin against the lightning specialist. Leave the main enemy to me. Both nodded. Miko stepped next to Fujin and said with a grin on her face, time to kill our first Jounin. Fujin smirked and replied, your first Jounin kill. Miko looked at Fujin and exclaimed, you already killed one. Akihiko interrupted them and said sternly, pay attention, they are making a move. They stopped speaking and focused entirely on their enemy. Chapter 182, Fierce Clash in the Grasslands. The two priests weaved hand signs quickly. Water release, waterfall jutsu. Lightning release, false darkness jutsu. One of the priests expelled a huge amount of water at the Konoha ninjas. It formed a huge wave and headed towards the Konoha ninjas. The other fired his lightning jutsu into the water, electrifying it. A smile formed on Fujin's face, this isn't like that noodle thief. These guys are strong. Fujin gathered a huge amount of chakra. For the first time in a long while, he showed off his entire chakra. The sudden spike in his chakra gained the attention of the Uchihas around him. They were about to do multiple flickers when they felt Fujin's chakra spiking. Miko looked at him and wondered, when did his chakra grow so much? It is almost as high as some of the Jounins in my clan. Akihiko and Masaru were shocked as well. They both thought, what chakra? It's almost as if he is from the Senju or Uzumaki clan. Akihiko thought, if he doesn't get involved in the coup, then his future will be very bright. While Masaru thought, shit, his chakra level isn't far away from my own level. Fujin rapidly converted his chakra into the wind element. Wind release, infinite breakthrough jutsu. He exhaled a huge wind. It hit the incoming electrocuted water wave. The high-speed winds halted the water wave. It pierced into the wave and neutralized the electric charges within it. However, the water wave also absorbed the winds and didn't allow them to move towards the Jashinists. Both jutsus neutralized each other. The water fell down on the ground and spread slowly in all directions. Fujin's jutsu also raised a huge dust cover over the battlefield. Seeing the opportunity, Fujin began forming a couple of vacuum bullets. He could sense their positions accurately. He was about to shoot out the vacuum bullets when his eyes widened. He and the Uchihas immediately flickered away. A fraction of a second after they flickered, dozens of blood drops passed through their previous location at a very fast speed. Fujin frowned, shit. That bastard used the same tactic. And was faster than me too. Zankoku had the same idea as Fujin. He too used the chaos created by the two wide-range jutsus to sneak attack. Unfortunately, all the Konoha ninjas had very good senses. So his sneak attack didn't have any effect. After flickering, Masaru weaved hand signs and slammed his hands on the ground. Earth release, ground splitting jutsu. The ground in between them began cracking. As a result, all the water due to the earlier jutsu began draining into the ground. Fujin observed it and thought, nice. Fighting a lightning user over water would have been annoying. As soon as the water began draining, Akihiko weaved hand signs. Earth release, earth flow spears jutsu. Masaru's jutsu had loosened up the ground. Akihiko took advantage of it. Hundreds of stone spears began appearing on the ground. In an instant, they were launched at the Jashinists. The faces of the Jashinists became grim. They realized, first that massive wind jutsu. Now back-to-back large-scale earth jutsus. These guys aren't weak. Blood immediately began gathering around Zankoku. At the same time, one of the priests waved hand signs and extended his arms forward. Lightning release, static wave jutsu. A lightning current was released from his palms in all directions, forming a net. The incoming stone spears hit it. Almost all the stone spears crumbled. The rest slowed down. The priest smirked. Earth jutsus are very weak against lightning. However, the debris was still headed towards the Jashinists. But, a blood dome formed around the Jashinists. The stones and pebbles were about to hit the dome when hundreds of needle-shaped blood drops were launched in all directions from the dome. They pierced through the stone spears and debris, reducing or halting their momentum as well as attacking the Konoha ninjas. The Konoha ninjas dodged once again. Fujin, who had to stop creating vacuum bullets once again, frowned. He thought, shit. This bastard keeps attacking even while defending. It restricts my ability to use sneak attacks successfully. Miko noticed Fujin's frown and commented with a smirk, now you know how I and Hoka feel while fighting you. Fujin replied, pass smart comments later. Any idea how to deal with them? I'm afraid we will run out of chakra faster than that bloody priest. Even before Fujin completed his statement, both Akihiko and Masaru flickered towards the blood dome. While moving, they tapped a scroll-holding pocket on their jacket and retrieved a scroll each. At the same moment, both waved the same hand signs. Fire release, exploding flame formation. They opened the scroll. The scroll transformed into hundreds of explosive tags with fire release technique which were launched at the blood dome in the blink of an eye. The explosive tags began exploding as soon as they hit the dome. The explosions released a huge amount of fire that wrecked the dome and allowed the remaining explosive tags to enter the dome. Fujin saw the damage and wondered, is this a variation of Tobirama's jutsu? I wonder what Tobirama would think if Uchihas are so good with the jutsu he created. That said, he did have an Uchiha student. The Jashinists immediately moved backwards. However, Akihiko and Masaru controlled the explosive tags and aimed at them. They aimed the explosive tags such that they would have to separate from each other. The explosions forced them even further from each other. Fujin and Miko were watching them carefully. As soon as their target was separated from the other two Jashinists, Fujin flickered in front of him. The priest was surprised to see him. He was about to attack when Fujin blew very strong winds straight at him. Facing such a wide-range jutsu at such a close range meant that the priest couldn't dodge the attack. The winds hit him head-on and sent him flying and rolling backwards for more than 100 meters. Multiple cuts appeared on the body of the priest. In addition, getting dragged along the ground caused him even more minor wounds. Despite the wounds, the priest got in a fighting stance right away. However, his opponent wasn't just Fujin. As soon as he got up, his position was showered by shurikens. The priest immediately moved, but Miko flickered in front of him. Fire release, Great Fireball Jutsu. The priest saw a giant fireball heading towards him. He frowned, these kids are relentless. I need to take the initiative back. He quickly made hand signs. Lightning release, False Darkness Jutsu. He fired a lightning spear at the incoming fireball. The lightning spear pierced through the center of the fireball and dispersed it. However, the priest had no time to celebrate. Miko was no longer behind the fireball and Fujin had appeared right next to him and was swinging his sword at him. The priest stepped behind and pulled out a black-colored retractable spear. It was a spear he used during rituals. As he moved it to block Fujin's sword, lightning began flowing through it. The sword and the spear clashed. The priest was expecting Fujin to be electrocuted. However, his eyes widened as he saw Fujin's sword cut through his spear. Realizing the danger, the priest leaned backwards. Displaying excellent flexibility, the priest almost leaned parallel to the ground by bending at his knees and leaning backwards completely. Fujin's sword slash went from above him. Even the winds alongside the slash didn't hit the priest due to how well the priest moved. A sword slash cut through the grass for over 100 meters without hurting anyone. As soon as the sword slash passed, the priest kicked at Fujin. Fujin, who was planning to bring his sword down, kicked his leg. Not wanting to face his sword in close range, the priest used the force of Fujin's kick to fly backwards. Fujin followed his kick with a vertical slash with his sword at his opponent who was still in the air. Seeing the attack, the priest dug the half-cut spear into the ground and used it as a base to move out of the line of attack. Miko, who was watching his every movement with her sharinans, realized the direction where he would be dodging. She launched multiple kunaus with explosive tags at the place where he would land. However, the priest noticed the attack and extended his arms at them. Lightning sparks were released from his palms. They hit the explosive tags and disarmed them. They also slowed down the kunaus and just sidestepped them. Fujin and Miko were about to press on the attack once again, but they halted after seeing their enemy's actions. Lightning had once again gathered in the palms of the priest without any hand signs. He slammed his hands on the ground. Lightning was discharged in a radius of 25 meters around him. Miko immediately flickered behind Fujin, who casually swung his sword and sent out a wind wave that neutralized the lightning discharge heading around him. The priest looked at his two opponents and took a deep breath. At last, he had broken their initiative. He said, "This one never expected that he would be pushed so much by little kids like you. Lord Jashin would be very pleased when this one sacrifices you to him." Fujin and Miko's eyes twitched as they thought, "This one? Who the hell speaks like that?" However, without replying, both Fujin and Miko pressed on the attack once again. The priest, who had just found some respite, was once again in a tough situation. Chapter 183, Akihiko vs Zankoku. Fujin and Miko both had spent a lot of their chakra due to the jutsus they used earlier. So they attacked the priest with Kenjutsu and Taijutsu. Due to the threat of Fujin's sword and Miko's Sharinan, the priest was having a tough time. Despite the advantages, Fujin or Miko didn't manage to land any hits on him. However, the priest couldn't help but complain in his mind, "What the fuck does Konoha teach in their academy?" I spoke in such a hilarious tone. And I provoked them. But they kept attacking me without a single emotion on their face. I expected these brats to say at least something to give me some time to catch my breath and attack first. Some distance away from them, Akihiko and Masaru too had entered into fights. They successfully separated all the Jashinists. Akihiko took on Zankoku while Masaru took on the remaining priest. As soon as he was far away from Zankoku, Masaru attacked the priest. He flickered in front of him and launched a fireball at him. However, the priest created a water wall to defend himself and counter-attacked with sharp jets of water. Masaru dodged while closing in on the distance between them. The priest frowned while moving backwards as he thought, "He is strong. I can't get into a taijutsu fight with an Uchiha. And I have to avoid looking into his eyes. So annoying." I hope Zankoku-sama wins quickly and comes to aid me. As the priest decided to stall and fight defensively, the fight entered into a stalemate. The priest's water jutsus completely shut down Masaru's fire jutsus. Though Masaru resorted to earth jutsus, they didn't have much effect on the priest. Some distance from them, Akihiko and Zankoku faced each other. Like all Uchihas, Akihiko launched a huge fireball at his enemy. He launched shurikens into his fireball to double up. Zankoku waved his arm. A blood wall appeared in the path of the fireball. The fireball hit the blood wall and exploded. Though the explosion didn't reach Zankoku, it cleared the path for the shurikens. Zankoku's attention was entirely on Akihiko. So he didn't notice the shurikens until they were very close. He immediately moved out of the way, but a few shurikens left cuts on him. Without giving him any respite, Akihiko pressed on the attack. He flickered in front of him and attacked with the tanto. Zankoku grabbed a retractable spear and used it to block the tanto. While he blocked, Akihiko's Sharinans noticed the cut wounds on his body closing by themselves. He kept attacking, however, his expression grew grim. Akihiko analyzed, his self-healing is off the charts. The only one I have heard about having such healing is the first Hokage. But how can this lunatic have such a healing ability? And what are its limits? If he can heal non-stop, then it wouldn't matter how many times we hit him. He will still keep healing. Zankoku looked at Akihiko's face and guessed his thoughts. He smirked and said, "That's right. No matter how many times you wound me, I will always heal. Your whole squad is doomed to die at my Han." He suddenly stopped speaking and stood still. Akihiko smirked, "It doesn't matter how much you can heal. Once you look in the eyes of an Uchiha, it's all over." While he was speaking, Zankoku looked into Akihiko's eyes. Akihiko didn't waste the opportunity and cast a Sharingan Genjutsu instantly. Akihiko stepped forward while thinking, "Now let me see if you can heal yourself after being beheaded." He raised his arm and swung his tanto at Zankoku's neck. However, all of a sudden, Zankoku attacked. He swung his spear with all his might. Akihiko's Sharinans noticed the movements and he immediately jumped backward. However, he couldn't dodge completely. The spear hit his right shoulder and left a deep cut up to his abdomen. He began bleeding profusely. A sadistic grin appeared on Zankoku's face. In order to not alert Akihiko, he used no chakra in that attack. That is why Akihiko was caught off guard. Akihiko quickly moved back while inspecting his injury. He looked at Zankoku and asked, "How did you break my genjutsu?" Zankoku grinned and said, "I have been blessed by Lord Jashin." "Do you think your pathetic eyes will be able to cast a genjutsu on someone blessed by Lord Jashin?" While he was speaking, Akihiko analyzed, "While the cut is deep, he only managed to cut my flesh. None of my organs is hit. However, it hurts to move my right arm. I won't be able to fight with my right arm with my full strength or speed. What a shit situation to be in." Akihiko narrowed his eyes and replied, "The ones who worship Jashin can't be put under a genjutsu?" "Bullshit, I slaughtered all your forces with my genjutsu." Zankoku didn't reply and began attacking. He noticed that his words didn't have any demoralizing effect on Akihiko. Instead, Akihiko was just taking the opportunity to rest and stall for time. Akihiko fought back while cursing in his mind, so he heals his wounds and is immune to genjutsu. How the fuck should I fight him? The two engaged in an intense taijutsu and kenjutsu battle. Zankoku held the advantage, but Akihiko managed to hang on and didn't take any more damage. Seeing him not making any headways, Zankoku controlled his blood and attacked Akihiko with a blood needle rain once again. Akihiko quickly flickered away while making hand signs. Fire release, Fire Dragon Jutsu. A huge 50-meter-long fire dragon was formed. It headed straight at Zankoku. Zankoku once again defended himself with a blood dome. The dragon hit the dome and exploded, but no harm was done to Zankoku. While Zankoku was defending, Akihiko made hand signs and placed his left palm in front of the cut. A gentle chakra was released from his palm and he began healing the wound. He immediately stopped the bleeding. He wanted to heal more, but he was once again attacked. He stopped using mystical palm jutsu and defended himself. As he defended, Akihiko analyzed, I can't defeat him. Though I know more jutsus, the blood he controls is very versatile. And his chakra is higher than mine as well. I guess I should just stall. Defeating him without Sarasfuin jutsu wouldn't be possible. Seeing that he couldn't win, Akihiko fought with the intent of only stalling. Zankoku attacked very aggressively, but he couldn't get through Akihiko's defense again. He also tried to get away from Akihiko without any success. The entire battlefield turned into a stalemate. Whoever won first would turn the scales in their favor. Miko and Fujin were extremely annoyed. They held the advantage for the majority of the time. And yet, they didn't manage to land a single hit on their opponent. And while Renjiro's training had taught them to ignore all enemies' words, his constant taunts and slurs were getting on their nerves. Having fended off the latest round of attacks, the priest said, this one was born in the land of lightning. When this one fought in the Great Ninja Wars, your parents hadn't even fucked each other. Run back to your academy, runts. Finally, Miko couldn't control her mouth. She attacked while yelling, by the time I am done with you, you won't be capable of fucking anyone. The priest blocked her kunao and dodged Fujin's sword and replied, I serve Lord Jashin. I haven't fucked anyone for over a decade. Fujin glanced at Miko. He thought, she is about to lose her cool. He looked at his opponent and thought, I haven't engaged much in trash talking. I should consider adding it to my skills. I can think of a bunch of strong opponents who would go berserk with a good trash talk. Not wanting Miko to lose her control, Fujin commented casually, I heard that you Jashinists have to sacrifice to your dumb god. Don't tell me that you have to sacrifice your private parts in order to be inducted into your little cult. Miko was surprised by Fujin's words. She wondered, when did he become so foul-mouthed? Even the priest watched Fujin with surprise. He said, of course not, we have to con. Fujin interrupted him and said, considering that you are so proud about sacrificing them, I guess that they were very pathetic. The priest immediately yelled, you little br. However, Fujin instantly flickered in front of him and slashed with his sword horizontally. The priest immediately moved backward and jumped out of the path of Fujin's attack. Seeing that his opponent was in the air, Fujin fired a dozen air bullets at him. While attacking, he thought, what a pro. Even his anger was fake. The priest immediately weaved a couple of hand signs and extended both his arms forward. Lightning arcs appeared between his palms. Lightning release, lightning beam jutsu. The priest fired a lightning beam straight at Fujin. The beam was very wide and completely covered the priest. All the air bullets crashed into the beam. They hindered the lightning beam slightly, but couldn't pierce through. Fujin watched the lightning beam coming at him. He didn't move. He focused chakra in his throat and converted it into wind. When the beam was just a meter away from him, he opened his mouth and fired a vacuum bullet. However, Unlike Fujin's earlier vacuum bullets, this one was huge. It would be more appropriate to call it a vacuum cannon instead. It pierced straight through the center of the enemy's lightning beam and dispersed most of it. The priest was shocked. He tried to use the force of his own jutsu to move out of the way while in the air. Miko was surprised as well. Launching an attack in such a way meant that Fujin won't be able to dodge. However, realizing the risk Fujin took, Miko flickered close to the priest to attack him. It looked like this fight would finally have a result soon. Chapter 184, A Close Call. The recoil from his jutsu helped the priest move away from the line of Fujin's attack. However, it wasn't enough. The vacuum cannon grazed the right side of the priest's abdomen and tore a huge chunk of it. His wound began bleeding immediately. His liver and intestines were damaged. At the same time, whatever remained of the lightning beam rained down on Fujin. Fujin extended his left arm forward to block it. All the lightning charges hit his left arm and lightning flowed through his body. Fujin endured while thinking, not bad. Due to my training in the lightning element, this attack doesn't feel much. Though if I took the entire beam head-on, it would have hurt. Anyways, I now see why Renjiro emphasized the importance of undertaking missions. Though deciding to counter-attack was risky, the danger allowed me to perform my jutsu even faster. I wanted to create a wind vacuum beam. The center of the beam would be made of vacuum. It would be only a few micrometers wide but would be very long as it would have to extend across the entire length of the beam. Instead, I managed to create a much stronger vacuum bullet. I will call it vacuum cannon after I train it properly. Though the result wasn't what I envisioned, it is still a very good improvement. While Fujin was enduring the electric shocks, Miko flickered next to the priest while weaving hand signs. Fire release, Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. She fired 6 small fireballs at the priest. 2 of these were headed at him while the other 4 cut off his escape routes. The priest, who had just suffered a huge injury, now had to face another attack. She smirked, it's over. Unfortunately for Miko, her calculations were horribly wrong. Humiliated at being injured to this extent, the priest entered into a frenzy. His eyes turned reddish as he exerted all his chakra. A high amount of lightning gathered on his palms. He screamed in rage as he attacked his surroundings indiscriminately. The lightning hit the fireballs and deflected or dispersed them. The grass around him was hit and it caught fire. Miko was very close to him and was in range as well. She tried to flicker but wasn't fast enough. Lightning bolts hit her and made her scream in pain. The lightning electrocuted her and left multiple burns on her body. She fell to the ground in pain and was unable to control her body properly. Seeing that his opponent was vulnerable, the priest grinned. He immediately moved towards Miko while pulling out another retractable spear and making lightning flow through it. Fujin's expression grew grim. He had just finished enduring the previous attack. He flickered instantly. While Fujin, Miko, and Akihiko were engaged in intense battles, Masaru was under no threat. His opponent acted like a turtle and defended everything Masaru threw at him without counter-attacking. A water wall was erected in front of the priest. On the opposite side, a dozen explosive tags exploded. The wall collapsed but the priest was unharmed. Masaru had a frown on his face. He cursed in his mind, not only does this bastard defend well, but he also does so without even looking at me. The priest was relaxed when he suddenly sensed danger. He immediately jumped up while weaving hand signs. Half a second after he jumped, a fire dragon erupted from the ground and moved straight at him. The priest completed his hand signs. Water release, water prison jutsu. A water prison formed around him. The fire dragon hit the prison and exploded, but the priest was safe. However, his expression wasn't good. He analyzed, who attacked me from there? Did he create a clone sneakily or is it someone else? He prayed that it wasn't the second scenario. If Zankoku or the other priest was defeated, then his death would be only a matter of time. Right after the fire dragon exploded, a dozen kunao with explosive tags were launched from the ground at the water prison. At the same time, Masaru flickered and tossed more explosive tags at the water prison. Under the intense attack, the water prison crumbled. However, the priest jumped out of harm's way. Masaru followed him and attacked him with kunao. Not wanting to risk looking into his eyes, the priest moved away from him while looking at his feet. Surprisingly, he saw the Sharingan eyes on the ground in front of his feet. In an instant, he fell into a genjutsu. At the very next moment, a kunao stabbed into his skull through his eye. Masaru smirked as a figure appeared from the ground. He said, if he avoids looking into 2 Sharinans, we can just use 4. The enemy will succumb eventually. Great job, Genji. Is Shunko safe? The person who had just interfered in the fight was Genji, who had earlier taken Shunko away. Genji nodded and said, I healed his wounds as best as I could and left a shadow clone with him. He isn't in any mortal danger. Though we can't expect him to join the fight and might have to carry him on the way back. Masaru replied. Great work. I will go and aid Akihiko. You aid the 2 kids. They are fighting above their weight class. Genji was surprised to hear that Miko and Fujin were fighting against a priest by themselves. He had observed Masaru's fight and had realized that the priest he was facing was stronger than him. He nodded and quickly moved towards them. Miko was in a state of shock. She had seen Fujin's attack wound their enemy critically. She pressed on with the intention to finish the fight, but the tables were turned in the blink of an eye. A lot of her skin was burnt due to the lightning shocks. Her body couldn't move properly. And her Sharingan saw the priest running towards her like a savage. She desperately tried to get her body to move but to no avail. The priest reached her and raised his spear up and slashed it down at full power. Terror spread through her mind as she realized that her life could end. Memories flashed through her mind. She thought about her mother, her father, her childhood friends, her relatives, her sensei, Hoka, and Fujin. At that very instant, Fujin appeared in front of her and slashed his sword at the spear. Miko's eyes shined as she watched Fujin. The priest also noticed him and the grin on his face grew wider. The 2 weapons clashed. Fujin expected his sword to cut through the spear once again, but unexpectedly, it didn't. The priest yelled loudly and exerted all the force he could on the spear as he thought, I knew this kid would jump in front of her. Even though these kids are ruthless, the Konoha ninjas are all softies. If they were from Kumo or Kiri, I would have worried about the other cutting my head while I cut their teammate's head. But with Konoha, the possibility of such an action is minuscule. So I have poured all my remaining chakra into this spear. The victory or defeat would be decided with this one attack. With one swing, I'll kill them both. Fujin realized that his opponent had focused all his chakra on the spear. The force that the priest exerted began to push Fujin's feet backwards. But suddenly, Fujin controlled and focused his chakra. Some chakra gathered on his solace to stabilize his position. He was no longer being pushed behind. However, compared to his feet, a lot more chakra flowed through his sword. He pushed back with his full power. A crack appeared on the spear. The priest's eyes widened as he saw his spear being cut into two once again. He watched as the sword continued ahead. He tried to move, but his body was too exhausted to respond in time. The sword reached him and severed his neck. His severed head had a look of disbelief as he watched Fujin. His last thoughts were, to think that I would die at the hands of a kid. The last priest under Zankoku was killed. Chapter 185, Evolution. Miko watched the priest's head fly in the sky. Her body and mind finally relaxed. For the first time in her life, she was genuinely grateful to someone. Genji reached this battlefield to see Fujin cut his opponent's head off. His eyes noticed Fujin's chakra flare at the last moment and left him astounded. Fujin sensed someone rushing towards him and immediately looked at Genji. Seeing that it was an ally, Fujin relaxed. He turned his attention to Miko in order to check her injuries. However, he suddenly stopped. A surprise could be seen on his face. Genji flickered next to him and looked at Miko. His expression grew grim on seeing her injuries, but suddenly shock could be seen on his face. Miko didn't understand why Fujin and Genji were looking at her like this. Soon, a huge smile broke on Genji's face. He exclaimed in excitement, "Miko, your Sharinans have evolved into two Tomo Sharinans." Miko was shocked to hear that. After a moment, the shock passed and excitement rushed in. She tried moving but the pain brought her back to earth. Seeing her grimacing in pain, Genji said, "Don't move, I will heal you as much as I can first." He began using mystical palm jutsu to treat the burns on her body. Fujin observed them as he thought, "I thought I had huge gains from the fight. But mine don't even compare to hers. That Sharinan is a huge cheat." Though to be fair, my life wasn't at risk. Even if my jutsu had failed, I was confident about surviving that attack without affecting my ability to fight. On the other hand, her life probably flashed in front of her eyes. Fujin turned his attention to his dead opponent as he analyzed, this guy was very good. His every move was a scheme. And he managed to reset initiative and flip the table multiple times. My attack should have finished him off and yet he managed to reverse the situation. If I didn't know chakra flow or if my chakra reserves were close to empty, he would have managed to kill us both. Even assuming that I didn't make a move or was slow, Miko would have died. Perhaps in that case he wouldn't have exerted all his chakra in that attack. Either way, he perfectly calculated or guessed our moves and made the right plan. More importantly, I shouldn't underestimate someone just because they are critically injured. Even though no one will go off like Deidara, the final struggle can be very tricky. Especially when dealing with veteran jounins. He focused back on Miko and observed Genji's jutsu without disturbing him. Genji was slowly healing the burn marks on her body. Fujin realized, he doesn't seem to be very good with medical ninjutsu. Genji noticed that Fujin was observing him. Without taking his eyes off Miko, he said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of her. If you can still fight, you can go help out Akihiko and Masaru. They are fighting against the Grand Priest." Fujin asked, "So Masaru won his fight?" Genji nodded. Fujin looked in the direction that Akihiko, Masaru, and Zankoku were fighting. He could feel that an intense battle was happening there. He said, I am very low on chakra. I won't be able to help much in the fight. And seeing the way he controls blood, I could be a burden instead. Genji was disappointed with that answer. However, he said, all right. Look after Miko after I am done healing her. Fujin replied, I will. Genji stopped talking. After a minute, Fujin asked, are you a medical ninja, Genji-san? Genji answered, no, I just copied the mystical palm jutsu and practiced it for a bit. Fujin replied, I see. He thought, as I thought. I guess most of the Uchihas have copied this jutsu. After all, it should be very convenient to heal yourself and your teammates without having to depend on a medical ninja that can't fight or defend well. Just like Genji, Masaru rushed towards Akihiko's battlefield. He went sneakily and hid in the tall grass as he observed the fight. His eyes widened as he saw Akihiko's condition. A huge scar was visible on his right chest. His jacket was dyed red by blood. A frown formed on his face. How is Akihiko struggling so much? Is the opponent so skilled that he can dominate him while needing to avoid looking into his eyes? As he was analyzing, he suddenly realized something. Wait a minute, he is directly looking at Akihiko. He isn't avoiding the Sharingan at all. But why isn't Akihiko casting genjutsu? He thought hard and concluded, the only possibility I can think of is that genjutsu doesn't work on him for some reason. Whatever, I'll know when I join the battle. He stayed put in his spot waiting for an opportunity to sneak attack. Akihiko and Zankoku kept fighting, unaware of Masaru's presence. Tanto and spear clashed multiple times without anyone landing hits. In one such clash, Zankoku exerted a lot of force and pushed Akihiko backwards. However, Akihiko just used Zankoku's force to move away from him. Tired of being stalled, Zankoku chased with full speed. Unfortunately, he moved very close to where Masaru was. As he was chasing, he felt heat on his right. He turned his head to see a long fire dragon heading straight at him. Due to how close they were, he couldn't dodge or defend. The fire dragon opened its huge mouth and chomped down on him. Inside the fire dragon, Zankoku screamed loudly as his flesh burned. In a few seconds, the fire dragon exploded. Akihiko moved away from the explosion and Masaru appeared next to him. He smirked and said, "Bullseye." However, Akihiko's expression didn't change. He said, "It isn't over. He can heal from all wounds. And genjutsu doesn't work on him. So don't put your hopes on it." Masaru frowned. He pulled out a scroll and said, "No wonder you have been struggling so much." He made the confrontation hand seal. The scroll transformed into hundreds of explosive tags and rushed into the place where the explosion had happened. All of Zankoku's skin was burnt. He was covered in blood. However, he still stood straight. The blood on his body rapidly healed him. New skin was forming. But it was horrible to look at. At that moment, he saw hundreds of explosive tags heading at him. He immediately formed a cocoon of blood around him. The explosive tags stuck on the cocoon and began exploding. The cocoon was destroyed. Zankoku tried running away, but most of the explosive tags exploded right next to him. Akihiko and Masaru observed him with their Sharingan. They saw as his flesh was blasted. But the blood that poured out of his body kept protecting and healing him. Masaru asked in an annoyed tone, does his body have an infinite amount of blood? Akihiko answered, my guess is that he produces it with his chakra. We may have to exhaust his chakra to truly win. Or we will need Sara's Fuinjutsu. Masaru asked, have you tried cutting him into pieces? Akihiko answered, haven't been successful so far. As they were speaking, they heard Zankoku yelling in anger. A few dozen blood drops formed around him and he fired them in all directions. Akihiko and Masaru dodged quickly. Akihiko said, that's why. Every time I manage to get an upper hand, he resets my advantage with a wide-range jutsu forcing me to evade. They saw an intact Zankoku walk out of the smoke. However, his body was horrible to see. He had no clothes on his body and his entire body was covered in horrible scars. Masaru said, he looks disgusting. But this is indeed annoying. Our chakra is already about to run out. As they were about to engage in another round of battle, Genji was done healing Miko. He said, I have healed your burns. They won't be harmful to you. But don't move around a lot. I can't deal with the damage the lightning might have inflicted on your inner organs. Fujin, look after her. I'll go help out Akihiko. Fujin nodded. He saw Genji leaving. He made a hand sign and a shadow clone appeared next to him. Without speaking, the shadow clone followed Genji's path. Miko asked, why did you make a shadow clone with so little chakra? Fujin shrugged and said, I'm interested in seeing how that battle ends. This guy is probably the strongest opponent we have ever faced. Other than that incident when we were returning from hot water, of course. Miko said, that's true. I wish I could see it too. They didn't say anything for a few seconds. Suddenly, Miko said, Fujin, thank you. I was very scared after I got hit. Fujin looked at her. He could feel that she was very grateful to him. He said, our team might have been disbanded, but we are still teammates. No need to be thankful for such stuff. Miko didn't reply and just smiled. Fujin asked, how are your injuries? Miko sighed and said, my whole body is aching. That bastard fried my body inside out. Fujin replied, yeah, he was fierce. Veteran jounins are still too strong for